How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got quite a busy news day. We're going to be joined by Randy Hales from Memphis. We can talk a little bit about what's going on in Memphis over the last couple of months since the last time we had him on the show. So there's a hell of a lot that's happened there. And we'll talk to him how he's doing. And we'll mainly be talking about the current wrestling scene, taking your phone calls. Of course, we couldn't do that yesterday because we had 5 guests. We have Bryan here. And Bryan, I personally really got a kick out of last night's show. I don't know, what anyone else thought, but I don't know. It was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I thought it was a great show. One of those shows where my role was just to sit there and listen.
Mine too. I know. I was just really having a good time listening to those guys. It's real. I mean, the stuff that was real interesting to me is we had a bunch, and I wrote this on the website earlier. It was a bunch of guys. I mean, Ric Flair being the youngest at 52, and the rest of them in their 50s and 60s, and they're looking back at this period in their life, which is a long time ago, because most, we were talking about Ray Stevens, and most of them, in fact, they were all together in the AWA from 72 to 74, and there was, looking back, I mean, there was a hell of a collection of talent in that AWA at that time, and it was, they really looked back, and that was like one of the funnest times. In fact, most of them said the funnest time of their whole careers. Mm-hmm. I mean, Heenan, probably had more fun, or talked about WWF in the 80s because, the money was obviously bigger, and Flair in the Four Horsemen days, but he said that this was the other one. Graham said it was, Graham and Bockwinkel and Bastien said that was the best time of their whole careers. So, it was very interesting, and, I kind of remember some of that period as a little kid reading about it. I didn't see a lot of it, but, I was glad to do that. We got a lot of news to talk about. The WWF released its year-end financial figures and quarterly financial figures, and the big stories, the way they're being framed that I've noticed, talk about and they did lose like $20.4 million in the final quarter of last year, which we knew because that was all the XFL losses. But the reality is that they're, for the year and for the quarter, the actual wrestling business was probably the strongest, not even probably, it was the strongest for profitability that they ever had, which, again, this ended April 30th, and it's, quite frankly, April 30th was a whole different ballgame than today. I mean, everything's totally different. This was the quarter that included the WrestleMania, which was the biggest show of all time, so that's another reason why.
But it was also the quarter that included the XFL.
No, but that's why they lost, at the end they lost money. But, I mean, if you take the XFL out, if you remove the XFL, and you're just looking at pro wrestling, what was their actual profitability? It's a $26 million profit for the quarter. I don't think they've ever done that one before. Mm-hmm. They've had some $20 million profitable quarters. I think they actually, you know what? They may have, but it was one of the most profitable quarters they ever had. Now, what does that mean for today? Because, again, it's a whole new ball game, and they're either going to go, this thing with the WCW. Obviously, it's going to end up being either a big boom and a big turnaround of this current downtrend, or it's going to be a short-term boom and exacerbate the downtrend, in 6 to 9 months to 12 months. So what they did last year, it's funny, or even last month, it's kind of irrelevant, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. $456 million grossed in a year. Think about that.
Yep. And they can't afford Goldberg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They would have only grossed $450 million.
No. They would still gross the same thing.
Oh, they would still gross the $456. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. For last year, it wouldn't have made a difference. For next year, would make the difference. Now they expect to rise 8 to 10%. I looked at some of their projections. Now here's one. When you look at their projections, that's really a tough one. Is they expect? Okay, they're going to be doing. They did last year roughly 200 house shows. And they averaged about 12,000 people per show. Okay, they are expecting this year to do 300 house shows, which would be basically 200 WFs and 100 WCWs, and they're expecting to maintain an average of 10,000, and that's going to be tough. You're already laughing,
especially now,
Yeah, I know.
Maybe a year ago, if this thing had happened a year earlier, it might have been possible, but actually a year ago, if this would have happened, and then WCW still would have died, and we probably would have went into a rut anyway. So, who knows?
Yeah, because the rut comes from one person. The rut came from lack of competition. Mm-hmm. And and then injuries and things like that. Looking back, I mean, the WWF saved itself. There's got to be some questions asked about Time Warner, about selling to the WWF, though, instead of some of those other people that bought. And because they lost the programming, and, that's like, that programming, I just don't, you look at, like, the way ratings are declining across the board for everyone, and you're taking a show that, delivers better than average ratings and just X-naying it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, that's another deal. Last night was the Last Dance, the final show for Ohio Valley Wrestling at the Louisville Gardens, and they had some changes on the show. The main event ended up being Undertaker and Kane beating DDP and Leviathan on a DQ, which is very strange to do a DQ finish on that type of a show. And it was originally supposed to be Undertaker and Leviathan with DDP as referee, and they switched that around. About 3,000 fans, maybe a little less, which I think that figure has to be a disappointment, but, I guess that's just the reality of promoting a non-WWF show. I mean, who can do that now? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Still, it's a non-WWF show, but they had a lot of big names that were supposed to be in, even if they had to change it at the last minute. Foley was supposed to be there, Kurt Angle, Undertaker, Page.
Well, Page was announced at the last minute,
yeah.
But you're right, and Chris Jericho was there as well.
Yeah, Jericho.
Chris Jericho did a job for Flash, which was kind of interesting. And Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko lost to Brock Lesnar and Brian Keck, which is really interesting with Shelton Benjamin injured, the two amateur guys. Because Brian Keck is like so not ready for that position.
It is funny because I'm looking through these results here, and you have Brian Keck in the opener who lost his deal. He's getting the win right there. Sly Scraper in the second match lost his deal. He gets the win there. It's like, what are they doing here?
I don't know.
I guess if they'll still stay around, it's no big deal.
No, I don't think it'll stay around much longer. I think it's like a 30-day thing.
Yeah.
The current issue of Sports Illustrated that hits the newsstands today, and people will get in their mail tomorrow and the next day, has it's I guess it's a Where Are They Now issue, and they just go through like all kinds of former sports celebrities, and one of them, 2-page story on Wahoo McDaniel. I've not seen the story, but people told me it's a very good story, so that's something to look forward to. Today, UFC had its big press conference today at the Meadowlands and everything in New Jersey, and Al was there. So we should talk to Al in just a second about all that. Carmen Electra was there, and Al, I got a phone call this morning about the banter between Carmen Electra and Frank Shamrock, and we got to tell us what happened.
Well, basically, guys, Frank asked Carmen, I guess, in regards to if she had she ever been submitted before.
Did she have any knowledge of
submissions and stuff? And basically she was like, no, and he was kind of like, inferring like, oh, would you be willing to try, learn? And he was like, I'm an Ultimate Fighter, like that kind of thing. And she kind of played it off a little bit, but she looked like she was a little bit upset by the comment.
Now, what about didn't he ask?
She looked upset by the comment.
Well, like who the hell are you? Like, what are you hitting on me? Like what's the story there? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But didn't he ask like who her favorite was also?
And she said Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah, no. No, actually, she did. He did ask who her favorite was, and she kind of like, well, I don't know, and then she like kind of looked at Tito and, oh, the champ,
That's what I was saying. Yeah, he because he was going like, oh my God, it's like she didn't know the name of the fighters because I tried to bail her out, after she didn't know what submissions were.
Right.
And he goes, so I asked her who's her favorite fighter, and she just goes, it's just him and Hong. She's looking at the poster. And then she just goes, the champ.
Right. But it was funny because
the champ. He's a bad boy.
It was funny because I was sitting next to Shoney Carter, who's fighting tomorrow night against Pat Militic, and the first thing she said was, some comment along the lines of, it's a really it's a real sport, like these guys really fight or something like that. Like she was like almost like surprised, and I looked at Shoney and I said, it is real, isn't it? Like that kind of like, right? It is. And he just looked and started laughing. The two of us busted out laughing, but it was, it was just one of those things that like, yeah, Carmen, you have been informed.
Well, Carmen's sitting there going like, wasn't I supposed to drive the Hummer now?
Right, exactly.
What the hell were they expecting, though, with Carmen Electra there as a spokesperson, though?
Well, you know what, guys? I might actually have the comments, because let me just check, because we did tape the press conference. Give me a couple minutes, I might be able to play it for you.
Okay. But the big announcement is that In Demand, which means that everybody that gets pay-per-view will be able to get not tomorrow's UFC, it's too late for that, but the September, which I believe is September 22nd from Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas.
Actually, it's September 28th. That is a firm date.
Okay, September 28th?
Right. It is a firm date, September 28th at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. Obviously, assuming that the Nevada State Athletic Commission approves the rules, which the meeting will be taking place July 22nd, I believe it is.
Right. And that's considered, they pretty much consider that's going to happen.
Yeah, it looks to be, Lorenzo Fertitta did say today, he said it looks to be a done deal, but let's not jump the gun. They still have to vote on it and stuff. But I would say with 90% certainty that it is going to be approved.
Wow.
Well, if they don't approve it, they can always make changes to the rules and get it approved, right?
Right, but I mean, they're really banking on having this approved so that they can run this show in September, and they're also going to run another show in October. Now, and they haven't said if it's going to be in Las Vegas, but I would assume that if they're going to run shows that close together, I mean, you're probably going to run it at the end of October. It looks like you can't run it, any sooner than that, really.
No, you can't go less than 4 weeks between shows.
Right, so I would assume that it's going to be again in Las Vegas. So this may be the last time we see it on the East Coast for a while, or at least this year.
Well, this is. I tell you what, like the next 6 months for both pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. I mean, what an interesting period it's going to be for both of them. Because I mean, they got their big breakthrough, but that is no guarantee that that the public is going to come back. I mean, they're going to have to market it. They're going to have to create new stars. They're going to have to, educate the sports people to what this is and have it treated like it's a sport, like a big sporting event, like a big boxing match, which, I mean, it's all possible, but I mean, and there's going to be a competition too, because if they get on In Demand, I mean, Pride's going to get on In Demand, and there's other organizations that look like they're starting up. So that's going to be interesting. And
I think the most important thing that they've got is that name recognition of being the UFC, because I just had a friend over last night, and he goes, do they even still run UFC in this country? And I said, yeah. And, he remembered it from the glory days. And I think if they do like a really strong marketing campaign, and if it's in all the magazines and everything like that, and it's available on regular cable, and people can give the first show a try, then if they have a hell of a show, then things are looking good.
But ultimately, I still think they need television. I mean, like, not cable, but television to market the fighters like wrestling does. I mean, they got over, in 93 and 94, they got over on this uniqueness of this fantasy thing that everyone had that fantasy about. And then when people realized what it was, it's like, who would win between a sumo wrestler and a kung fu fighter and all of that crap, right? I mean, that's because that was the original draw of the shows. And then after a while...
and the no-rules fighting that got him in trouble, that catchphrase.
Right. The no rules, no stopping on blood and all that kind of stuff. Now that it's a regular sport, they need to have that boxing type of thing. And, boxing has, HBO After Dark, and the newspapers, cover, like, when the big fight's coming up. And that's how they draw their big pay-per-view buys, is the mainstream media hype. These guys have to figure out a way to cut in on that. Wrestling can do it on its own, as we see all the time, because it has its own television. There's one thing I want to mention also, but when we get back to that WWF thing, at the thing today, that presentation the WWF made, Linda McMahon said, and she's going to wish she never said this, that when they asked about the declining ratings of SmackDown, she said because there are too many SmackDown spoilers on the internet. And I'm just thinking, like, before, like in January, there was like, what was the difference when the ratings were, in the high fours? It's, now in July it's, the whole
run the difference ever?
The internet has been running SmackDown spoilers since the day SmackDown started, and now in the last, since February, all of a sudden, that's the reason for a ratings decline. I mean, there's, that's like the TNN thing. It's like, there's just no way, and I wish they wouldn't say things like that, because, and then the other thing is I'm not sure, I haven't looked on their website, but somebody told me that on their own website they do spoilers.
Oh, yeah, they do. I've seen them before.
So there you go.
And see, one of the things is, though, it's kind of hard when you get asked a question like that, and the answer is, well, people have lost interest in our show. And, how do you really say that at a press conference? It's almost like they have to say something, but it's just, what do you really say that doesn't sound totally pathetic? Like, the SmackDown spoilers that we put on our own website. Just like that, when Jeff Hardy won the title from Hunter. I mean, they had it on the main page. They had a giant photo of it. They had the spoilers, Wednesday morning, everything. And now you go back and blame that for why people are watching the show.
You know what you say? Especially because this change is going to happen. Just go, what happened is we had a good thing going, and we have all the characters on for 4 hours of prime time a week, And for the first year or so, it worked real well, and now it led to overexposure. And now we're cutting back, and nobody's going to be on TV for more than 2 hours a week. We're going to split our group up into 2 different groups. We're going to, that problem has been addressed. I don't know if that's going to lead to bigger ratings or not, but that's what you say, and obviously that's what they're hoping for. And there's your answer. It's a better answer.
That's a great speech, but I just don't ever see Linda McMahon or Stephanie or Vince saying that.
Oh, well. I said it.
You just know how they are, though,
I know how they are.
Never back down. Everything's always great.
Yeah. They're still making money. And lots of it. Even with bad quarter, it's all, again, you look at the bad quarter, but 100% of that bad quarter is football. The wrestling had a good quarter, so. So anyway, that's the story there. We're going to hit some emails. Any more news before we hit emails, Brian?
I just thought it was so weird when I was looking at that quarterly report and they were talking about WrestleMania attendance and the 67,000 people or whatever, and I thought 67,000 people were at this wrestling show 3 or 4 months ago.
3 months?
Look at it now.
Two. Wait.
That's right, it was April, May, June. Yeah. Yep.
No, actually, it's almost 3.
Still 67,000 people.
Yeah. That means that we should be getting the final number on the pay-per-view. I'll have to ask about that. Because 90 days is when you usually get the real number. So anyway, this is from Dan Stab, who says, I think having WCW take over the Raw time slot is a huge mistake. I do feel WCW taking over SmackDown would be a great idea for one reason. It's taped. If you add the number of green guys plus the ring rust factor, the chances for mistakes are far more increased.
People don't seem to get it yet.
If it was straight WCW and WWF, that's a good point. And in fact, one of the reasons originally when they were going to do a lot less mixing of the two companies, that they wanted the Saturday night show taped was for that very reason. They wanted to tape it on Wednesday, so they had 3 days to post-produce it. But anyway, if you add the number of green guys plus the ring rust, the chance for mistakes are okay. If they take the Raw time slot, those mistakes will be there for the world to see. That's right. If they take the SmackDown slot, those mistakes can be edited. And actually, SmackDown's going live, so that's not the case anymore anyway. And, we've joked about this.
It doesn't matter because it's not going to be a straight WCW show. There's going to be green guys on both shows. And there's going to be WWF guys on both shows.
Yeah, and we don't know who's going to be on what. That end of July is when they're going to be doing a lot of that mix. All right, that's going to make for some really interesting TV. But the one thing, as far as we've joked about is they've gotten so lucky. There have been so many SmackDowns where there have been mistakes, and on live Raws for whatever reason, like God is on their side or something, there have been some mistakes, but not probably 1/3 as many. And now, they're not going to have that luxury. WCW used to always have the mistakes on the live show, and then WWF always had it on the tape show.
Yeah.
I think that, somebody, hated Eric Bischoff. You know what I mean?
Or maybe it's just, subconsciously they're just more lax on SmackDown because they know that no matter what happens, they can fix it. You know what I mean? They don't have that real pressure there that they're going live.
Yeah, well, Kate
or maybe
better
God.
I don't know, but we're going to start. Well, we're going to know soon enough. I do think though with the green guy,
sold to the devil.
Yeah,
that would confirm it.
I don't think WCW is in a position right now where they can go live on a regular basis. Well, it's not. It's the one thing that everyone needs to do is think that it's not WCW, it's WWF. It's two WWFs. WCW is just a name that they're using, like NWO was a name. It's going to be a separate organization, but it's not like Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page are going to be the biggest stars there. Let's see. And then he goes, am I the only one? Oh, he's talking about that Linda McMahon comment. No, you're not the only one. And it was, I wish she hadn't said it, but she did. Let's see. Will Pride be on pay-per-view in September also? Al, I was going to ask you, at the press conference, did anyone from In Demand, make clear or say that it's, only UFC, will Pride or other organizations also be on In Demand?
They just said UFC. They did not mention Pride or any other organization.
Well, they wouldn't mention it at the press conference. Because somebody said that there was something said about exclusivity. Was anything said about exclusivity there?
I did not hear any comments of that nature.
Okay, so my feeling is that Pride would probably be, and because In Demand, they're looking for more events because the boxing revenue's down, the WWF revenue's up, but they lost ECW and WCW, so they're looking for more events to make money. So I would think that Pride would be on as well. The thing with Pride that they're going to have to do if they want to make it here is it's got to be. I don't know about live because of the time difference and everything like that. You can't do it live because it's 2 in the morning. But I think that they have to get it not 3 weeks later. because I just think that by 3 weeks everyone kind of knows, and there's not that. I know, like when I have friends over and everything, you know, they like Pride because they know the names more than UFC, but there's not any real intensity when you're watching it because you know you're watching something from 3 weeks ago, whereas the UFC, it's like every moment you're on your seat because you really don't know what's happening next, whereas, you know what I mean?
But they still have the desire to buy it, though, right?
Yeah, but that's only hardcore.
I mean, the way I look at it is, if you have the Pride show and it's taped, you're going to have the hardcore fans that are going to know the results, but they're still going to want to buy it, and the casual fans aren't going to know the results, so it's not going to matter either way.
Yeah, but they're not going to. I don't know. I think that you need a quicker turnover. I really do. I don't think the tape shows do well. I don't think even the hardcore fan. I think the super hardcore fans will buy a taped show, but I think that there's a group of fans that are interested in it, that do know about it, and will not buy a taped show just because they already know the result.
Yeah, but that's almost the whole argument about SmackDown spoilers, though.
But you're not paying. There's a difference. There's a difference between free and paying for it.
It's free.
I mean, for $24.95, are you going to pay for SmackDown? You know what I mean? When you know the results ahead of time. That's the difference. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, this. We talked about this the other day. I guess on Mike Awesome's T-shirt, somebody, Francisco MacGyver, said that he watched the tape and paused the VCR. The T-shirt says WCW.com, not WWF.com. Since the WCW logo is red, it does look like WWF. But when you freeze frame it, you can see that it actually is WCW. So one of those things, at least, isn't quite as bad as we thought. This is from Marcos, who says, yesterday you were talking about the problems between Mid-South and WCW backstage in 1987 when Watts Company was bought. Can you elaborate on this? I grew up watching Mid-South living in Oklahoma City, and I remember just how excited I was when they merged with WCW. Well, it was the NWA, it wasn't WCW then. And then nothing happened. You mentioned some animosity concerning low-card placements of the Mid-South guys. What was the end result? Did it have anything to do why Steve Williams disappeared soon after the merger? What happened was Dusty, they booked the Mid-South guys, for the most part, to not be stars, both in their home territory and, on the big shows. They would have, like, a Mid-South main event feud and put it on second or third match on a 10-match card. And pretty much, it's all the things that we said, like, one of those things of, like, kind of like a role model of, like, what you don't do, and they did it all. And nobody cared about UWF, like, real quick because, and Steve Williams lasted a little while with WCW as UWF heavyweight champion, but again, like, that wasn't given any kind of parity with Ric Flair. I mean, there was this thing where everybody thought, they're going to build up, Ric Flair and Steve Williams as this, like, dream match, and by the time they finished with Steve Williams, long before he ever got to Ric Flair, nobody even cared about Steve Williams, and then eventually he left. He never actually dropped the belt. I think he traded the belt for, like, 50-yard line tickets up to a football game or something. I think that's the old UWF belt. That's the story there. Now, this is something. It says, Linda McMahon stated WCW will not have a TV show. Is that true or false? Did she say that? I think
what she said is they were not going to have a new television show for WCW, and she didn't specify, but it was basically they're not going to create another 2 hours of programming in addition to Raw and SmackDown, and she never said either way anything about giving, Raw to WCW or whatever.
I'm sure that she wanted to avoid saying that, because the minute she says it, everyone's going to know, especially since they haven't shot the angle yet. This is Paul Bearer disappeared off WWF television. What happened to him? He works in the front office. He's part of the talent developmental program. He kind of scouts the guys and sees to make sure that they're all doing okay. So that's why Ohio Valley and Heartland Wrestling, which would be the new one. It's from Scott Woods, who goes, when WWF gives people like Christopher Daniels, Nova, Kid Cash, FBI, dark matches before Raw or SmackDown, does that mean they are interested in signing them, or is it a personal favor? It just means they're looking. In some cases, if they're on, it's just in some cases it's to warm up the crowd, and in some cases it's because they want to look at him. I mean, Christopher Daniels, I think, is just they know he's a talented guy, and they like to put him in, in one of those dark matches because he is. But if they had any interest in signing him, I think they would have. I mean, God knows they had, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for up here in Tacoma, they called Buddy, and he's going to be bringing 3 guys up, and they'll just, they're there. If they need him to warm up the crowd, they'll warm up the crowd. If they need him to get beat up by Kane and, whatever, they'll do that. And if not, they'll just sit back there and get their money and go home. Just extra bodies.
Okay. Because I see your point that WWF needed to have a group of WCW guys come out and oppose the WWF right from the start. I mean, there's different ways of doing it. I was in agreement of the idea that they needed to rebuild that thing and build it up and not do any interpromotional until WCW was rebuilt. But the nature of how they're doing the TV, they had to put these guys on TV first because if they had just, because they weren't getting a new time slot. So because of how things changed, and they changed, I think the plan change that they made was the right plan change given how the market changed from their original plan. Okay, there's a problem. There are very few people from WCW that people may recognize. Everyone else from WCW are mid-carders, and people won't recognize them, would come off looking like WrestleMania when they had a group of WCW stars that didn't get good reaction. By the way, there was another hole in the storyline on Monday. After Booker T laid out McMahon, they played Booker T's entrance music. Well, that's true. They did.
Did they? I didn't even notice that. His old music, the Harlem Heat music?
The Harlem Heat music played, yeah. It sure did.
Really? I didn't even notice that.
Yep.
Maybe we're so used to seeing him with that music, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. This is what Linda McMahon says. Major WWF-WCW confrontation at the pay-per-view, which we know. No TV for WCW. WCW will be integrated into current TV on Monday and Thursday. Without giving away any storylines, after Invasion, we will see some breakouts which challenge Monday and Thursday between two separate companies. Draw your own conclusion. So basically, she tried not to say anything.
Yeah.
Talked with TNN and MTV about creating an additional 2-hour show. After all the costs, they settled on integration. If a spin-off of WCW made sense to MTV and TNN, then they are not ruling that out. If they feel they want to talk about it when that time arises, they will. In mid-August, SmackDown will go live on Thursday. She said this will prevent internet sites from providing spoilers, which is true.
Yes. Mid-August, is that before or after the Pillman show? That's early August, right? Like the 8th or something?
Yeah, so it's right afterwards.
Okay. This is Thursday night. People were wondering about that.
She talked about the tour idea of WWF running Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, WCW running Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. That is not the plan. I can tell you that right now. WCW's first pay-per-view is tentative for October, no date yet. They will judge from the buys of the October pay-per-view to find out, how often or many more they will do. They have more opportunity to do overseas events with the acquisition of WCW. It may stress their production crew, but they believe they can handle it. That means that they're going to have a new production crew if you're going to be taping some stuff overseas. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You can't have the same production crew. Well, I guess you could, but that would be a bear. Working Monday night in Tacoma and then Thursday night in Brisbane, Australia. Yeah, that'd be death.
They really. I can just see this in about 3 months. There's going to be so many people just going absolutely insane, and they're going to have to have a new production. They're going to have a new everything.
They're going to have to hire some new people, because there's going to be people burning out fierce. Okay. Yeah. Let me just go through this, and we're going to get to Randy Hales. They're shifting from home video to DVD, which that's interesting. Tough Enough soundtrack is set for September or October. Stephanie is not married. Okay, yeah, we knew that. The Rock will be paid.
Not officially.
Okay. Anyway, we got Randy Hales here. Randy, how are you today?
I'm good, Dave. How's everybody?
Hey.
We're doing pretty good.
I'm really excited about this today. I was just thinking right before I came on, this is the first wrestling-related thing I've done in almost 3 months.
Is it really?
It really is.
Now, how long?
It is.
Now, you have taken a break at different points in your life from wrestling. Have you ever taken a break for 3 months, because basically your whole life since probably 10 years old has been wrestling.
I think that I've taken a break for 3 months before, but it's never been in a situation where I always knew, just I'm mad at somebody or somebody's mad at me or I'm burned out or whatever, I'll go back. And, this is the first time that there's no going back.
So you're really not I know there's no immediate going back, but are you looking at this like this is a big part of your life for 30 plus years and it's over, or are you looking at it like I'm going to stick, you know what I mean? How are you mentally with all this?
I'm okay. It's tough. Memphis Wrestling been part of my life as we've talked about before. For a long time, and I'm at the point now where I really think that Memphis Wrestling, as we know it, is done. It's gone. It's no coming back. You never say never, and there's a slight possibility, but I think it's at the the point now that it's not going to happen. And it's at a point now where, and I feel for wrestlers and everybody, there's nowhere to go.
Now, looking at the scene right now, okay, WWF just pulled out of Memphis Championship Wrestling after, I guess they may have another week or two or a couple weeks left on that deal, but it's basically done. Lawler, ran a show a little over a week ago, I guess. Do you see Memphis Championship Wrestling with Terry Golden being able to survive, after this WWF thing is gone? And what do you look at as far as, the Jerry Lawler, Dave Brown thing and where that stands after one show and what they're going to be able to do about TV, because, you can only run those old clips for so long.
Okay. First of all, about the Terry Golden situation, it is possible. I think he owns his video equipment, so as far as the production is concerned, he owns the equipment, so there's not cost there. As far as his TV time slot on Channel 30, it was a barter situation, but one of the things that they used to get a barter situation was the WWF involvement with WWF stars on it. So I don't know if that'll continue, but if everything stays the same as far as that, he'll be able to continue and produce a TV show, but to be successful, losing the WWF money, the revenue, and the talent base, that 90% of his talent's been free, that he hadn't had to pay. Now all of a sudden, he'll have to pay talent. So it'll be tough for him, but I don't think it's impossible. As far as the Memphis situation is concerned, let's kind of get it straight on Lawler's role. As I see it, Lawler, his main goal is he just wants to be on Memphis television. He wants to be on Channel 5. He didn't have a lot of hands-on anything that's so much. He basically says, I talked to him last Thursday, and he said that he basically just shows up and talks. He's not writing or putting the shows together or anything like that. He also told me that the goal of Dave Brown, Corey Macklin, and Jimmy Hart, and the TV5 goofball Creighton Armour was to do a live show. That was the swerve, and that was the plot all along. But with the new general manager coming in and the liability issue, there's not going to be any live wrestling. That was their plan all along. Now, Lawler told me just last week that it's absolutely a given. There will be no more live wrestling in Memphis, and they were given the option of producing their own show. Lawler said that they hadn't pursued that because of cost, and not going to produce it. So the only thing they're doing is the Legend show, and like you say, the clips are run out because they're using clips now from VHS tapes, and the video quality of some of the stuff is just crappy.
Now, wasn't the Memphis show that Golden was running, the TV show, doing like a 1 rating, somewhere in that range?
It was actually when it was head-to-head against us at 11 o'clock in the morning. Most of the time, it wasn't coming close to a 1. It did better when it was on at 1:30 in the morning. As a matter of fact, I read something on the internet recently. They had a show that did like a 3:40 or something.
And that's with the WWF guys.
Yeah,
that's with the WWF
must have been like
guys.
big name WWF guys. Yeah,
but it's developmental talent, most of them. I mean, that's green as grass.
Yeah. So now, what have you been doing, and how is life after wrestling?
I went through phases. I haven't got to the point yet where I know what life after wrestling is going to be for sure. I'll be honest with you. First thing I tried was something that I thought would be cool, and actually it was a financial situation that the money offer was good. It was with a radio station group here. It was a advertising sales thing, and they thought the notoriety that off of TV for forever would be helpful. But the bottom line is that I'm no salesperson. You know, salesperson, the dreaded guy that comes in and nobody wants to talk to. And I don't want this to sound egotistical, but you know, normally because of the TV, most places you go, people want to see you. And I'm used to that. Hey, Randy Hales, how's TV5 Wrestling doing? Give me your autograph, whatever the case, talking wrestling. And now, you know, they're friendly until they find out what you're doing, and you know, that's not to me. So what Randy Hales is going to do for the rest of his life, honestly, I don't know. I just know it's not going to be as average as a radio salesperson. I mean, that sucks.
Now, have you had any interaction of late with Jerry Jarrett, and is he starting something? Because we heard all the rumors, and then they pretty much died down. I
haven't talked to Jerry Jarrett in a couple of years. I don't think. I talked to Jeff a lot, and his dad's a big kayfaber. I mean, even kayfabe's him. Jeff did say that along the time with the WCW deal, he did tell me that his dad had some investors lined up and ready to go. But since the WWF ended up with WCW, Jeff hadn't said anything to me about his dad trying anything.
Mm.
How's Jeff doing?
Jeff's doing fine. It's kind of right now for him, life after wrestling. Of course, I'm sure he's still under, well, I know he's still under Time Warner contract, so he has income coming in, but he's kind of doing the domestic thing, has two little girls, and he's been away from home a lot most of their lives, and he's doing the daddy role and the husband role and playing Mr. Fix-It. He's doing good.
Mm-hmm. Well, he could always work for his father, too, in the land development, right?
At one time, I believe, when he was out of the WWF at one period of time, I believe he went and got his real estate license. I'm almost positive on that, so that's a possibility.
Also, I just wanted to mention this earlier, and I forgot. If anyone went to that show last night in Louisville, kind of curious what you thought of it. So, anyway, we'll talk about that. Sure. Randy, did you talk to anyone who was at the show last night? Or not at all?
No, Bobby Eaton promised me he would call last night and never did. Don't you know Cornette was just almost suicidal when they pulled Mick and when Kurt was unable to make it. That sort of thing gives Cornette a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. They did okay, though. I mean, as far as, like, you know, Kane and Page subs and everything. I mean, you know, I think WWF did about as good a job as they could.
Have you been watching much of the OVW stuff?
I'm about a week behind. In fact, I just watched 2 shows last night. So, yeah, I'm pretty caught up.
I'm really entertained by those shows. Did you watch the show? Who was it? Was it Randy Orton and Prototype, and they did run-ins with at the end of the
I just watched that last night.
What the hell happened on that finish?
I don't know.
Did you tell it was bad screwed up?
I mean, I thought that whole match, you know, you had two, you know, and I think Randy Orton's got a lot of potential and Prototype as well, but, you know, they had a tough time working together. I mean, it was.
What happened? I haven't watched that show yet.
Just two very green guys, and it showed.
And at the end, I talked to Bobby. Bobby told me that a week ago. He said, "Man, Corny went crazy." He said he broke out windows in the building with the baseball bat. And
God.
A fit. And I said, "What about?" And he said, "Oh, some finish." And then I watched that tape last night, and there was no doubt in the world which match he got hot at, and I don't know what the hell happened. It looked like they were going into it, and Bobby, it looked like, came in too early. It was the biggest screw up that I've ever seen.
Cluster.
I think that both. I think
Arena has some broken windows because of that finish.
Yeah. Did you see the thing? And Bryan, you'll probably see this when you watch the tape. With Tony Benetti, like doing the training.
Yeah.
That was like so Jim Cornette 80s. Like it's like one of those things where he's like been sitting there. You know, it's one of those ideas that he's done many times before and seen before. And it's like you could just see with his video, he's been waiting for this one. You know, it's like everyone's probably seen one of them, but I mean, I still cracked up at it.
I thought it was fantastic. Brendan Baxter and I talked about that just yesterday. I mean, I laughed my ass off on that. So
Yeah.
Speaking of Cornette, I wanted to throw this in. If you'd have done this show with me 3 months ago, I'd have sounded much more like
Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette, because we talked on the phone. As a matter of fact, that's probably why you didn't invite me at that particular.
No, you had said to wait for a while, and this was a while.
I would have unloaded on some people, as a matter of fact. But I'm going to be nice today, most of the time anyway.
No, but you should tell everyone, like, basically what happened, because, we kind of talking in these terms, and everyone's going, what exactly happened to you? I mean, you were running Power Pro Wrestling. WWF basically gave you an ultimatum about either using Lawler or their guys, and you chose Lawler to keep the TV station, and then 2 weeks later or so, the TV station canceled you because people were kind of going behind your back. And what was the whole story? Well,
basically, what happened was in April of '98, I signed a 3-year deal with Power Pro Wrestling. We had one little swerve attempt that I ex-nayed before. Remember at the point when Lawler got hot before and the WWF pulled the deal, gave it to Golden? Remember that?
I remember that
period. I pursued a WCW deal at that point. I was going through Jeff Jarrett, and Jeff at the time was in with JJ and Russo, and I thought that was a pretty good little thing. Dave Brown called me, and for some reason, Corey Macklin. This is like real good soap opera. This is like Dallas to date myself, or Days of Our Lives today. This is like corporate intrigue and scandal. But what happened was somehow or another, Corey Macklin became buddies with Hart, and I don't know how, because Corey wasn't around when Hart was here for the 5 or 6 years. But anyway, so Dave Brown called me and said, "Hey," he said, "Jeff's the wrong person to talk to. Don't talk to him. Jimmy Hart. Corey's talking to Jimmy Hart." I said, "First of all, it's not Corey's company." I said, "Second of all, Hart won't help. Hart's a conniving son of a bitch, and everybody knows it." Here I go, right? Jim Cornette's on the air. But anyway, he said go through Hart. So I got Jeff went in to talk to JJ, and JJ said, "Well, Jeff, Jimmy Hart's already talking to me about this." Well, Jeff gets hot at me, right? Think I'm talking to Hart, which I'm not. And so they tried to go. They went to the TV station at that point with Hart and Corey, and they said, "Hey, WCW won't deal with Randy Hales, but they'll deal with Corey Macklin." Told the TV station this. Well, nobody in WCW knew who the hell Corey Macklin was, so that was a swerve. Corey had promised Hart money, but anyway, I had the contract, so that deal was ex-nayed quickly. That didn't happen. And this particular time, the contract was running out, and then even before the Lawler situation, had a new general manager of the station just like from February, and I was saying to Dave Brown, who works at the TV station, so Dave's advising me, and he's saying, "Well, right now is not the time. The guy just got in the building. He don't know us." Said, "Don't talk to him yet. It'd be a mistake." He said, "I'll talk to him." And so it went on, and I'm getting nervous because it's coming close to April, and Dave said, "I'm talking to the guy, and the guy loves wrestling, wants wrestling on the air." Then the Lawler situation came up with the WWF, and the WWF gave me the ultimatum, and Dave was on a conference call with me and Lawler, as a matter of fact. He said, "Let me talk to the general manager," and we had already advertised Lawler for this particular show, and Dave said, "We've advertised Lawler, and the general manager says we'll be canceled immediately if we don't deliver Lawler." So then, finally, when they call me in a week before the contract runs out, this Creighton Armour, who's a buddy with Creighton Armour, another part of the scandal, he gives me the notice, and he says he said, "One of the things is," he said, you've shown no interest in renewing the show, and that's my mistake. Dave never went to the general manager, which he told me he was, and I should have relied on myself, and I didn't at that point. And then they told me, he said, "Well, we're having people bid on the shows, and And unbeknownst to me, the people bidding on it was Dave Brown, Corey Macklin, and Jimmy Hart. And they had a meeting I gave my notice on a Saturday. But their plan was, they thought, and they got swerved too, they thought they'd come right in with a live show. And then the new general manager was scared liability reasons, and so he said no show. He said, you can bring me a tape, but that's expensive. So that's pretty much it. I was a little naive, and people that I thought was closest to me got greedy. And they really think, this is the funny part is, they told Lawler this in the meeting. Lawler met with them, and they said, we don't have anything against Randy Hales. As a matter of fact, we want him to write the TV. But said we just think there's a lot of money out there, and we need to be making it. And with Randy running the company, we hadn't been making it. And Dave Brown was making $500 a week for 1 hour's worth of work, which I thought was pretty good. And Corey Macklin was making $2.5. And, they just wanted more, and they just think there's a ton of money to be made, and they'll figure out the realities of the world real quick.
Well, the one thing that when this was all going down that we talked about is that, with Dave and Corey, they're unlike you. They don't really live in the wrestling business. They live in the real world, and the wrestling business is something they do on the sidelight, and they remember, hey, the history. We all know the history of Memphis Wrestling, and there was a period where thousands of people would come in week after week to the matches, and they're looking, going like, if it's done well. I mean, this is a city that did this and this, but it was a different world in those days.
And
you know from promoting shows, I mean, what you can do and can't do right now.
One little false vibe that they'll get is that they promote it, and locally they spent a lot of money on that Legend show, and they did real good. They drew $58,000. They did great, but Legend shows won't draw every time. Every couple of years is all a draw, and I was told this. I don't know what kind of sponsorship money they had, but they just as far as gates concerned, I was told they drew $58,000, and you know what the expense for the show, what they spent on the show?
No, I don't know.
$59,000. That's a grand loss. So what kind of business people were they? And now I'm sure they had sponsorship money, and it'll fall apart. I mean, it'll fall apart.
Well, I mean, we both know.
Aren't they claiming another show in August too?
Isn't that in Nashville for Prentice? Isn't that what they're saying?
I don't even know. I mean, I know.
I think they have another one planned too.
I know that they're shooting. They're shooting an angle where Hart puts up the car and Lawler puts up the crown and things like that, and aren't they going to have a special referee or something?
Yeah, I don't think they've announced a referee. At the Legend show, Lance Russell was the special referee with Humongous and Lawler. And, there's some people, including me, I like seeing the clips. I don't have to watch a show to do it, and, I got most of them, on the tapes. But the young generation of wrestling fan may be a little interested. It's just not a long-term thing that I think could be successful. I don't care who it is. Even at this point, I probably sound bitter and hate their stinking guts. Still, I was screwed, and I told Lawler, I said, go do your best to try to save the TV, because I certainly, even if it would have been those goofballs that had it, I wanted that to continue, because that's one thing they don't understand, the passion of Memphis Wrestling. I want it to continue even if I'm not involved with it, and they don't have that passion. The only people left that have that passion is me, Lawler, maybe Bryan Christopher, Dundee. They just don't have that passion, and it just doesn't mean as much to them.
Well, the one thing, that Memphis wrestling tradition, that was the last one. I mean, every other local, there's the WWF, every other local wrestling tradition is done.
Right.
I mean, there's, the TV was long gone. I mean, Memphis outlasted everybody by, 10 years, realistically. And, one thing, we went last year to Cornette's 30th anniversary show. And I was just looking back over it, actually, a couple days ago. I was reading back in the old Observer and thinking about it. And, you saw the TVs leading up to that. And, he pushed and pushed and pushed, like Jackie Fargo and the Fabulous Ones and all those guys, and you remember how big they were. And the reality was the people who were there, and I was sitting actually with Jimmy when those guys would come out. And I mean, Fargo got a nice, polite reaction. But before Fargo, I mean, a couple other people came out, and there was no reaction. And I mean, I was sitting there, and he's just going, if they don't react to Fargo, I'm going to, like, shoot myself. And they did. They did, so he didn't shoot himself. But it was real sad for him because, he, he remembered it so well, and it was such a big thing at the time. But, to the new wrestling fans, I mean, most of the people who were there to see Mick Foley and Kane.
Right. That's what drew the house, no doubt.
Oh, no, without a doubt. And, to them, I mean, they might have heard their parents talk about the Fabulous Ones, and it wasn't like when they came out there was no reaction, there was a reaction, but it was not that reaction. It was both sad and happy reaction. It was like when I talked to Stan afterwards, and it was like, for one day he got to, like, relive, like, that great period of his life, but also for that one day it was, like, so obvious that period was, like, over and never coming back. You know what I mean?
And that's what's sad. To me, you asked me earlier about life after wrestling, and just the way. And I know there's a lot of guys, and they're all in the WWF making tons of money, but all these young talents are missing out. It's just unfortunate that the territorial system had to die. Not just Memphis, but even though with Power Pro. Was never a territory. OVW is not a territory in the sense that it used to be. What happened when Lawler and Jarrett sewed in that big soap opera back in '97, and then that's when the territory collapsed. If they wouldn't have sewed it, would always, I think, continued. But what talent's missing out on, and I got so frustrated. And as a matter of fact, I'm rambling here, but I was listening to your show yesterday, and Bonkwinkle and Bobby and everybody that you had on there, and you were hearing the stories, and it's so great, and the way it used to be in the car every day. And even in this territory, we were on the road 2,000 miles a week, and going to Memphis every Monday, and Louisville every Tuesday, and Evansville Wednesdays, and different places Thursday and Friday, Memphis TV Saturday, and Nashville Saturday night. And just the experience, not just the wrestling, the experience of being on the road is so great. And I used to tell the developmental talent, I said, you're just really missing out. They would, on a Friday night, if they were in a town 80 miles from Memphis, and then have TV the next morning, they would bitch about it. They said, man, 80, 90 miles back to Memphis and have to get up to be at TV. And hell, I've been in Louisville on a Friday night and got back to Memphis at 7 o'clock in the morning and gone to television. It's just not the same, and I feel not getting that experience is bad for the future of the business.
It's definitely a different business, and it's going to change. And it's going to change a lot over the next year. We just don't know how. A lot of phone calls here. I'm going to start with Todd in D.C. Todd, how are you today?
I'm okay. How are you doing, Dave?
Better than when I wrote you.
Oh, that's good. Will you send me an email back about any update, or is there anything?
There's nothing that I can talk about now,
okay.
But
Yeah. Okay. And hey, Bryan.
Hey.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
Hi. I'm depressed by WWF, WCW, so I want to talk about that for a bit, and then I have two questions for Randy. First off, Dave, Bryan, do you guys think that Vince has lost control of the locker room at this point?
Not this early.
It's a lot of weird things are going on, and I don't know if things are going on that he doesn't want or he does, because you don't know. Vince he's a clever guy, obviously. And sometimes he gets credit for being more clever than he is. And so you don't know if, like, some of the stuff that's happening with that kind of resentment going on is something that he wants, because a little bit of real resentment kind of makes for better television, unless it gets out of control like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
We talked about that a couple days ago with Bret and Shawn. I mean, Bret even gave an interview just like, I think it was like a year ago, saying, I really don't even hate Shawn Michaels anymore, because I look back now and I realize that a lot of this was Vince trying to work us against each other, and it worked. And I think that, like Dave said, Vince doesn't get, or he gets too much credit for being intelligent or whatever, but I think sometimes he doesn't get enough credit for some of the things that he does.
So, I mean, I don't know what exactly he wants out of this right now. I mean, that Acolyte speech had some reality to it, and it was like, I thought it was like, wow, that was like pretty good TV.
I'm not talking about just bitterness. I'm just talking about booking 101 mistakes. Like, I
that's
don't see
different.
how. Well, number one, the WCW booking, but number two, like the Benoit and Jericho thing. Like, honestly, I don't see how Vince McMahon could make those decisions. Like, fundamentally, he made mistakes that he knew would draw less money, and like, there's something up with that.
Yeah, but I don't know if he actually thought that it would draw less money, because Vince has always been the guy that always goes back to the big hulking dudes when business goes down, and I'm sure that he saw Benoit and Jericho, and even though, everybody else might have thought, okay, these guys, they can be made into real superstars, Vince probably, after 2 weeks, just went, they're too small.
Well, that's
Same
fine.
thing he always does.
That's fine, though, Brian. Then you just build it up to the pay-per-view, you have Austin squash him, and then you go back to the big guys. I mean...
Yeah, why did
that
he stop
doesn't make
3
no
weeks?
sense to give up that early.
Why did he stop 3 weeks early? I have no idea why. And hey, I was real perplexed about that, as everyone was, because yeah, you're right. There's if you change your mind, you at least go full board till the pay-per-view, and then after the pay-per-view, you go, okay, I don't believe in it.
And then,
one thing I was thinking about, and I don't know if you guys would all notice this, because we all talk about the size of the ring and everything. I think that big ring makes guys look smaller than they really are.
Oh, of course it does.
Okay, and that makes it, and that's why I'm like really scared for some of these WCW guys, because I don't think anyone realizes how small some of these guys like Shan Moore are going to look. Because because we're used to them in that small ring and seeing them in there with Rey Mysterio and Elix Skipper and all these little guys, and when they show up, if they show up, because I don't, we don't even know how many, if they're ever going to even get anywhere near TV. But some of those guys, it's going to be scary.
Well, just look at Tajiri when he's in the ring. I mean, you got Kane that is big enough that he can step over the top rope, and here's Tajiri who hits the turnbuckle, and his armpits are like they're on the top rope. He just looks tiny. And half the guys are going to look like that. Like, think of Jamie Noble. That dude is so small.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot bigger problems than just the small guys, though. I mean, they made 3 gigantic mistakes this week. And, I mean, at Madison Square Garden, nonetheless. Number one was the fact that they made Shane McMahon the person who fired the first shots in the war. Because if you're going to have WCW versus WWF, the thing you don't want to remember is not Shane McMahon going there and saying, we're going to, fire the shots in our war. This is not the guy you want as a mouthpiece for the organization, because he is in WCW. Everyone knows that he is in WCW. Then they went on, and they did the Booker T thing. He's been portrayed as a coward. This is your champion, a coward, not a guy who's, willing to fight Austin, but a guy who's, running around, ducking through the crowd and, hiding from him. This is a guy that, needs to be portrayed strong, and he's been portrayed weak. And then the worst of all is the fact that they're splitting up the shows, because there's no long-term planning. If they want to make this work, you need to have the guys, you need to have 2 opposition sides. If you just split up all the guys in the WWF versus WCW, where's the interpromotional stuff down the line? What you've done is you've just created 2 WWF shows that are exactly the same as now, except for the WCW guys interspersed in. And if they'd done right now, if they'd gone to the feud right now, and they just had, Scott Steiner versus, Austin, and Angle versus Booker T on the first show, and they just had the WWF guys squash them, at least that would draw 1 buy rate. They're not going to draw any buy rates, because by the time they've gone through this whole convoluted thing, no one's going to buy WWF versus WCW, and they're not going to get even 1 match out of the whole thing.
Well, what I think the mentality right now is on that is the idea that WCW was so weak that they really weren't going to do big business with it, and they may have, but I think that they didn't think that. But what I think they're doing is they're going to create a new WCW, which has nothing to do with the old WCW, over the course of, say, the next year, by keeping them apart. And then when they move them back together again, then that's when they're going to really start doing money. I think that's the mentality they have, and I think the mentality they have is we can't do money with it now. Now we're just going to do like this soft launch, as Vince said. We're going to do something where we sort of tease it and do it for a while until we break it off. But this is not, this is just something so guys get television time. Now, as far as what they're doing,
if you split it equally now, I mean, like you just said, okay, you're going to have 2 WWFs, but the whole thing is, like you said, a year from now, they're not going to be 2 WWFs if the guys are really kept separate on their show. If you got 30 guys on one show and 30 guys on the other show, and you don't mix and match for a full year, then all of a sudden they are separate again.
But number one, they're not going to be able to do that. And number two, no one at home is going to buy that. There's not one person who doesn't think that WWF and that WCW has any bitterness with each other, or like that any of the matchups are inter-promotional matchups. Because even if we assume 2 years ago, if you had right now, you had the WWF and WCW. If 2 years ago everyone on the two sides had essentially been in the same promotion, then you just split them up right now, and you book them against each other, they'd still remember them as being within the same promotion. There's no realism there. There's no inter-promotional. It's like UWF versus WCW.
That's the whole point of waiting a year.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually very similar to what New Japan's doing with, like, 0-1. I mean, when they're trying to give the illusion, and it is sort of it's kind of a work shoot. There's a little bit of shoot in that anyway. But, the idea is like, there are all those guys, Hashimoto and Takaiwa and those guys, that are all New Japan guys, but the theory is that when the day comes and they go back there, that it's going to look interpromotional because that's what's going to draw money. I mean, that's what they're building everything towards. So, that's. I mean, we're not going to know for a year. I don't know. I don't know who's going to be on what side and how well, how well they keep them apart, how well they keep from doing things. He sticks to the plan because God knows these plans change every week.
Yeah.
So.
I really think the illusion is going to work in the end, because if you look at the NWO, it started out with Hall and Nash, who were two guys from the outside, and then from that point you added Hogan, who'd been in WCW the whole time, then it was like the Big Show, and then a bunch of other goofs that were in WCW, but the fact that it was like, fans knew that these guys were really all under WCW contract, but they didn't care. I mean, it ended up working.
But there's one thing about that one. Somehow or other, in that weird thing, through luck, the NWO and the merchandise became so cool for a brief period of time. And what's going to have to happen for this thing to work is the WCW is going to have to be really cool. And I don't know if they can. I don't know if lightning strikes twice. I don't know if they can do it. Obviously, they want to do it. That's what Shane's there for. But if it happens, I don't know.
Who do they have there on the roster that could be or going to be on the roster that is cool?
We don't know. I mean, they may end up with Rocker Austin for all we know.
It inevitably is going to end up, though, the interpromotional matchup is going to be just a WWF guy of now versus a WWF guy of now, because what Vince is going to do after
you're right about that,
is that he's going to go to the guy that's been with him for a while, and he's going to make him the star. So you're never going to get the big Goldberg versus Austin match. You're going to get Austin versus The Rock, which again is the whole problem. I'm just frustrated by it. Just standing a little there. Two questions for Randy. First of all, Randy, I remember back in the days of the SMW USWA feud, you had a feud with Bryan Hildebrand, and I wonder if you had any memories of that feud and of the man.
Okay, he was in, we did the Smoky Mountain USWA feud, and I believe you're right, it was 95. I think the first thing is that I think that I went up there to Smoky Mountain was the heel. It was the first time I'd ever done a heel thing in my life. Mark could work like a son of a gun. I mean, he could go, and then I made him the spokesman and the manager down here, and he really never had the chance. I think he loved me for life because he was in a high profile situation on Memphis TV, and the thing drew money. I mean, it really did. We did good with the deal, and I think the thing I remember about Mark is that he was, or Bryan, he was just tickled to death. He was, thrilled to be in the spot, and he would do whatever. He was just fantastic, and I was glad that he was able to have a great time because his enthusiasm. He wasn't making a lot of money here compared to what, like the Rock and Roll and Buddy Landell and the other people we were bringing in, but he'd have paid me to do it. I mean, he really would have. I mean, so all the memories of him. As a matter of fact, I'm in my office right now, and I have a picture framed that's from Louisville, and I've got juice, and he's on top of me. I'm covered with blood, and it's from one of the wrestling magazines. And you could tell he's in the picture. He's just kicking the shit out of me and smiling as big as he can. It was something that I'll always remember, and it was something that Bryan, it was a very important part of his life.
Oh, he was a great guy. And when we bring that name up, I start thinking about that. I mean, just all the conversations I had with him for so many years, and
I could cry quick. That's a real sad situation.
That big Foley chapter got to me in the second book.
It got to me too. You know, the thing is, you know, and I guess if, you know, the little bit I was around him at the end, and then I talked to him on the phone fairly often, not weekly or nothing, but at the end, and, you know, like, you know, you call him up and you're sad, and you're just like, oh man, you know, and I remember like when he told me, you know, that, you know, the cancer had come back, and it was like all over, and, you know, and I had actually one of his friends who called and goes, you know, he's not going to make it this time, and, you know, I called him up the next day, and, you know, I mean, it was just like, I know what you've heard. He goes, but you know, it was like, it's not that bad. Everyone's exaggerating, you know, and then he just wanted to talk wrestling. I mean, it was just like, and we had a conversation like, I mean, looking back on it, I can't even believe it. But we just had a, you know, he was all worried about, God, you know, I mean, he was working for WCW at the time. It's like, you know, it's the same thing. And it's like, God, you know, why don't they push Chris Benoit? You know what I mean? It's like, here's this guy dying. And he was a lot more concerned about why are they going to push Chris Benoit as opposed to, you know, it was just an amazing guy.
That's the type of people I like. Wrestlers, referees, wrestling fans, internet, audio hosts, whatever. If you love the business and have respect for it and a passion for it, you're on my list. The people that don't have respect for it's on the shit list. And Mark Curtis, I mean, heck, I'm getting shook up just thinking about it. He loved this business.
Yeah, he really did. Todd, thanks very much, okay?
Okay.
All right, let's go to Bryan. Bryan, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Good.
Really good.
Well, first of all, I'm a very big fan of Edge and Christian.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering, do you think they could get another title shot? Tag shot?
I mean, if they keep them together, they will. If they split them up, then they won't. I don't know what the long-term plan is because, you know, there's so much change that's going to be changing in the next month that, you know, and I don't know exactly where everybody falls in as far as like those mid-level guys. You know,
and the whole thing with them too is they've teased this breakup so many times in the past and then just dropped it. Yeah. So, you know, who knows what'll happen here.
Yeah, I think this time they're really going to have to do it, just for that reason you said, Bryan.
Yeah.
Because I just recently, ran into them not too long ago. I was in Toronto. I was training with them. Mm-hmm. And they seem like some pretty cool guys. And
you know, they did the show. You know, I like those guys because they're like what Randy was talking about. I mean, they're wrestling fans from the age of 10. They'll do anything to get over. I mean, they're making great money now, but you know what? They would be just as happy if they were making, you know, 1/4 of what they're making. They're just, you know, they made it, and, you know, I mean, they set their lives out to make it, and I congratulate them because they did. Because to make it in wrestling, you're overcoming tons of odds now. Right. I mean, there's just not very many jobs.
More than ever.
Yeah. There's not that many jobs, and it's just tough.
I even watched the King of the Ring this past Sunday, and I was really glad that Edge won the King of the Ring. And I didn't think he was going to do it, but I congratulate him for doing that.
Well, it's, you know.
He overcame the odds.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in a little traffic here, sorry.
Okay, we actually have to get running to a commercial. Anything else real quick?
No, I'm just glad that everything's going all right for Edge and Christian. I hope they get another title shot. Because I'm from Toronto also.
Okay.
All right.
No, that's where they grew up near there in Orangevale. Okay. Let's see. Have you seen the Muto Tenryu match from June 8th? And was it really 5 stars? The match aired on the 23rd on TV on New Japan TV. So I should get the tape most likely tomorrow or Saturday. So Monday.
In its entirety?
I don't know how much aired, but I'll bet you most of it aired. Yeah, because it's match of the year. I mean, like, everyone's pushing it for match of the year. So I think they're going to air almost the whole match.
Who was it again?
So Muto and Tenryu. So, let's see. If SmackDown goes live, what will that mean to people like myself who watch SmackDown on tape delay on Saturday nights on WB? Most likely...
You'll continue watching it on tape delay.
Unless if you don't have a UPN, yeah, it'll be the same thing.
One thing that sucks, Dave, is I hate this new deal they're doing. If the information, if they're going to go with WCW on TNN. We don't get SmackDown. We don't get UPN here in Jonesboro. So
you don't they have like a real strong UPN station in Memphis?
It's not on this cable. I guess if I put an antenna up, I could probably get it. But just off our cable.
Maybe you have AT&T cable like I do. I get about 4 channels.
Really, we get 60 channels, just no UPN.
Jeez. Because the Memphis one, I used to get the nightly ratings, from market by market of SmackDown, and Memphis was always like doing a 13 rating for SmackDown.
I wonder what it's doing now. Do you still get those numbers?
I haven't got it, but I'm sure Memphis and Houston were like the 2 markets, and Miami was another one, which is funny because they don't draw well in Miami. But those were the markets that were like but Memphis was almost week after week the strongest market because it would beat Friends, it beat everything in Memphis.
Lawler used to say that all the time. He loved that fact. His hometown, and he was co-host of the show, and it did that sort of number.
Hey, you just brought up the Lawler thing. I wonder if the rating in Memphis did slip when Lawler got taken off.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a possibility. There was a lot of media here, and in Memphis, whatever Lawler does, he's going to have support in this town, and that could have very easily turned people off in Memphis.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it since then. That's an interesting question. Let's go
maybe
to
Cole's
Max.
from Tampa.
Yeah, right. Let's go to Max. Max, what's going on?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, good.
I've been hearing conflicting reports about this situation, the WCW TV situation. Are they going to turn SmackDown into Raw and then give WCW its own show and the Raw?
No, WCW.
SmackDown as it is, and then
WCW will be called Raw, but it'll be the WCW show on Monday, and SmackDown will be called SmackDown, and it'll be the WWF show on Thursday, and they'll both be live.
So the Raw set, will that go to WCW and all that, or will they?
I would think they'll probably do a new set and new graphics and things like that because in fact I know they will. They're working on all that stuff right now.
Okay, so this could be some of the last few Raws we'll be seeing, the last WWF Raws we'll be seeing.
Yeah, we got about a month left or so. Yeah.
All right, and this whole Lawler situation, is it a work that he's that he keeps denying reports that he's signed on to announce for the WCW or WWF?
Randy, do you have anything to say? Because I actually do have something to say about that.
You go ahead first, and I'll follow you. How about that?
All I can tell you is that I am told by people in the WWF that he's in, and it's talked about that he's in, but they're trying to kayfabe it for the same, just like I was told it's the exact same thing as the Page thing. Now he's denying it.
Hearing, it's a work, it's not a work,
Well, I can. This is what I'll say on that. If it's a work, he's working me also.
Yeah.
Because
me too, as far as that goes.
Right. I talked to him, like I said earlier, Thursday, and flat out asked him, and he said, as a matter of fact, we've talked since Thursday because it broke. You broke it Sunday that he was going, and then he denied it and all that. And his words to me was, he said, heck, I wish Meltzer was right. Said I wish. He said He said
there may, it may be. It may be that he's got the deal, okay, and it's done, and he's kayfabing everyone. It may be. It also may be that they know that they're going to bring him back, and they aren't going to tell him till like Friday, so the word doesn't get out, and you know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean, is it true that Ross wants to go to WCW with him because he's not really happy with Heyman? And
nobody would be going anywhere.
No,
as far as
working with him,
yeah.
I'm sure he'd much prefer working with Lawler.
I think that's no doubt.
Yeah.
You can bet the bank on that.
And,
I think the best thing to say would just be, don't be surprised if Lawler returns. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to SmackDown tapings this week. It was an overall good show, but I mean, what is up with this Albert push? I mean, is it just because
it's what it is?
He's big.
Do you know how big that guy is? I'm serious. I mean, they see him in that locker room, and he's a lot more impressive.
In the airport?
Anywhere with that big head.
And the tattoos.
I'm really pushing.
He works hard too.
I'm really pushing for him. I hope the push works. When he was the first group of developmental talent that came in here in '98, and Cornette told me, and Bruce Pritchard, both of those guys told me, said, give me the list of guys, and said, hey, this this Matt Bloom is going to send him in, but he's lazy, and then we signed him, but this is probably his last leg. Said you probably won't like him, and he said this is probably his last stop, and so I had a negative feeling about him coming in. It took me about 30 seconds of looking at him and hearing his promos and seeing his work. He got over here, and not only was he not released, he was the first one out of like 7 or 8 guys that started here that went. I mean, he had the charisma, and I realized you hadn't really seen it, or you hadn't seen it on that television yet, but he got over here. We called him Baldo, and I mean, he was just recognizable to the people, and the name was kind of cool, and he's just a super nice guy, so I hope he's able to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't heard any of his real mic skills in WWF. I mean, samples, but not really a lot. Is he really good on the mic?
He was here.
He got over when you turned him babyface. I remember that.
Yeah, and
you know, of that group that you had, him and Crash Holly were really the only two that actually made it, weren't they?
On group number 1. Now, Stasiak,
I mean, later Kurt Angle, obviously, but yeah.
Stasiak was part of group number 1.
That's true.
And he went, but he was.
But he didn't hang there.
He was a goofball. I mean, something was wrong with that boy. But then, of course, Kurt Angle was successful. And sometime before we run out of time, Dave, I want to talk about the developmental program a little more at length. But we can do that if we have time later on.
Why don't we do it like after the next commercial break?
All right, that's good.
And hey, Bryan, are you going to any of the shows?
I think I'll probably end up going to SmackDown. I'm not sure about Raw yet, though.
All right, because you're not going to that one where they're defending, where Booker T is defending against Bagwell.
Spokane? No way. That's I don't even know where the hell Spokane is, but it's a long way away.
But that is the first show where they'll be defending titles, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's the first one.
And that should continue throughout the TV week, or?
It's going to continue probably everywhere.
Yeah, and all the house shows. They're going to be on all the house shows from this point forward. I think they want to make sure that those guys go on the road and earn their money, so to speak.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, very welcome. Let's go to Scott. Scott, what's up?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey.
Really good.
Just counting down the hours. Still tough enough. But
so am I.
You know, I gotta hand it to Edge. He won 2 matches in one night.
Okay.
He did, you know.
I want to talk about just basically like everyone else, the whole WWF, WCW thing. And I'm kind of sick of people saying like, "Oh, it's not fair. Now we don't have SmackDown anymore and stuff like that." I act like they're not going to get to see their WWF guys on TV. I mean, they act like they're only going to.
Well, the other thing also is that you still can watch those morning shows.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a market, I mean, those morning shows are going to recap everything anyway. It's not like, I mean, and the other one is UPN's in more homes than TNN. So, so it's like if you want that name, if the name means something, because the crews are going to be split equally, there are people who are going to be out of luck a little bit, with each thing, because neither of them are in 100 million homes. But UPN's in far more homes than TNN. And TNN's in more homes than USA ever was when they run USA, which nobody seems to understand. That's another story. And
part of the thing is that we get complaints from people that don't have UPN, and we get those complaints because they don't have UPN. We never hear from the vast majority of people that do get that station. So, I think it's just...
there's that little group of guys that, haven't been signed that everyone feels they need to get, like, Flair and Goldberg and stuff like that. Now, do you guys think of anyone who, like, who isn't really, talked a lot about by, the internet and stuff like that, as far as someone they should seriously think about bringing in?
I mean, everyone's been talked about. You know what I mean? There's no secrets. Everyone knows the status of anyone. I mean, you could say, Jarrett. You could say Jarrett just because he's a solid guy. Not that they need him, but he's a good wrestler.
I think Jarrett's a guy that, I mean, basically, if you look at the last 2 years in WCW, the only guy who was a solid heel on top. I mean, as far as guys like Kevin Nash and DDP, who it's always said that these guys want to be cool. They don't want to be bad. And Jarrett was always a heel. He was always he always ran from the baby faces, unlike DDP, who never did, even if he was a heel.
Yeah.
But Jeff just worked hard, and that's what he brings to the plate, a work ethic. And he's been on national TV for how long? 8 years. He would help.
Yeah, and I got like Rob Van Dam, I think too, just being like a new face, Because I mean, the guys like Lance Storm, Hugh Morris, who really got pushed in WCW, and not a lot of guys were watching. Like you could say right now, it's at the point where the vast majority of the wrestling fans, as far as WWF fans, have really no idea about Lance Storm or Lance Storm characters, and Hugh Morris and Stacy Keibler. So a guy like Rob Van Dam, or even maybe bringing in a developmental guy and pushing him as far as a new star in general, not just a WCW star, I think that'd be good too.
I think they're all equal, because you know what? It doesn't matter what the people know today. It's how they portray them, because they're going to get over to WWF fans or they're not, and the fact that they're Rob Van Dam or Lance Storm, it's up to how WWF pushes them, because they're all fresh faces. I mean, Booker T, if they give Booker T a chance to be a superstar, it's a new promotion and it's new guys. People aren't going to go, oh, that Booker T wasn't a superstar over there. It's like he's a new guy now. He can be a superstar if he can hang and if they give him the chance. And if they don't give him the chance, they want. And Van Dam's if they want to make Rob Van Dam a superstar, I mean, with all the we know Rob's got his flaws and Rob's got his strong points. If they want to make him a superstar, they will make him a superstar, and he may not make it, but that's not having anything to do with like his notoriety today or how many say 12% of the people know him or 20% of the people know him the day he walks out, or 80% know him, because once they're on that TV and people will learn who they are, and if they're pushed like they're big dogs, the people generally react to you like they're supposed to.
Yeah, it was like Jericho at the beginning. I mean, he was total mid-carder in WCW, where they gave him the superstar treatment his first night in. So he was a superstar for about a day, and then they buried him.
Yeah, it was weird with Jericho, because, I mean, he basically never really jumped higher than, the first 3 matches in WCW. Then he got so much buzz when, the time period in between when he left and when he was going to WWF. And then they brought him in. His first promo was against The Rock. And it was so weird, because it's not like he was a big star in WCW,
And the people, if you remember that night, because I sure remember it clearly, there was a percentage of the fans that were going absolutely bonkers for him, just waiting for this. And then there was a lot of them who really didn't get it, but within about a month or two, because they would hear that big reaction to him, everybody else kind of figured he must be something big. And then they still drop the ball on him, but that's why I say about Van Dam. Van Dam will come out, and those ECW fans and people who know him will make a lot of noise for him, and then it's up to him if he can hang, and up to them if they allow it to happen, because they cut off people's legs too.
And what do you guys think of right now? Because this is what I've been seeing as far as Raw. Now, I haven't heard about SmackDown spoilers, and I kind of don't want to, but I mean, as far as Raw, the way they did the whole Booker T and Kurt Angle and Austin angle, it kind of seems like they're taking a route where the main WWF guys, including Austin, should be portrayed as faces, and then so should the WCW guys, but they should be faces to their own audiences and heels to the opposite, rather than, Austin is a heel and Booker T is a face in both companies.
I'm still trying to figure that out, actually.
Because, I mean, Austin's comments on Booker T, he goes, you want to ask me a question? An axe is something you cut wood with. And I just started cracking up, because this was really funny. And it's like, this guy's supposed to be your heel, and he's cutting this promo on Booker T that's really making everybody laugh and really making him look like an idiot. And it's like, I don't know why they're doing this if they want Austin as a heel.
I don't think that it's so much heel and babyface right now as much as just getting people on TV and trying to expose them. Mm-hmm. And then, in October, when the sides are split up and they actually go their own way, then I think that everybody's going to go back to being heel and babyface. I think when it's mixed, it's just kind of like, like American League versus National League, as somebody would say. I think that they just, it's like, I don't think that they want, I don't think WWF can't be the heels, but they sure don't want the WCW name as the heels either. Yeah, so it's just a feud.
I know if Austin hits the stunner on any WCW guy or Shane McMahon, the crowd will pop huge.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look what happened when he did to Molly Holly.
I think that's what they should do. I think for the next couple months, especially because now they have no Benoit, they have no Rock, they have no Hunter. And it's been, I don't know if they've been talking about it, but I know a lot of people on the internet have been thinking, maybe they should turn Austin back face at least for the summer. And I think because the WCW thing, I mean, maybe he shouldn't be, like, a total face. Like, maybe he should still stick with the little heel antics he's been doing, like, as far as, like, hugging Vince and stuff like that. Maybe he shouldn't go out and cut, like, a total babyface promo like he used to do. But I think they should kind of go easy on, like, him feuding with WWF faces and have him as more like a WWF representative, at least while this WCW thing gets off the ground. And then
I see it more as he should be a heel when he's working other WWF wrestlers, but as part of the whole feud, he should be a guy that represents the WWF and just be,
Yeah, because he's Vince's guy. Because he's Vince's main guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And what you guys think of the Billy Gunn thing on Raw?
Funny.
Because, I mean, everything they...
Thought I wrote it.
Everything Edge was saying, it was just so true. It's like the Big Show segments they used to do when Vince McMahon came out and called Big Show the biggest disgrace. And then now they're coming out and saying Billy Gunn is the disgrace to the King of the Ring, and Edge promised not to Billy Gunn this year's King of the Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought it was hilarious. And Billy Gunn, I felt kind of bad for him, but then again I didn't because he's awful.
I don't.
Yeah.
The people in the building didn't react to that
I know,
interview at all.
They actually, there was one of the comments Edge made. I think it was the one where he was like, "I promise not to Billy Gunn this year's King of the Ring." They kind of like, "Oh my God, he just said that."
Yeah.
Because it went over the people's head.
Because I think everyone thinks that in the back of their mind. Like he's one of those guys. Same thing with like Steven Richards. Like when they come out, they know like, this guy is being paid, so they want to put him on the show. But I mean, they're awful. What's that on Raw? Again with this,
it was just they were looking around there and they're trying to get Taz over because
it's I think way too obvious though.
I think they're going to put Taz and Austin on Monday, and also for Tough Enough, they want Taz to be a star right now to get the show over. So it's like, okay, who do we got in this locker room? Richards, you're not doing anything. Go out there and lose in 10 seconds.
Yeah, but there were about 18 guys who weren't doing anything. They were all at that meeting. Could have picked a better guy than Steven Richards. I mean, it's so obvious that they're picking guys like Steven Richards.
They were all busy at the meeting, though.
They're picking guys like Steven Richards and Hardcore Holly, and the fans know these are guys that a win over them isn't credibility. But it's still a win. You could see through this plan. I mean, but if they have Taz beat someone like even a Hardy Boy, I think a win over a Hardy Boy would be more impressive.
Well, they
both got belts though right now. But I see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then maybe a shot at Austin. He doesn't even have to.
No, that may be Monday.
In that role.
Yeah.
Next Monday, you think they can do that?
You may be pleased tonight when you watch the show. We'll just say that.
Yeah, it may be Monday.
I'm really excited for both Tough Enough and SmackDown tonight. Because, I mean, I don't think they delivered at all. As far as everyone was talking last weekend about how King of the Ring, they need to do this huge WCW angle. Then they don't do it. And everyone's talking Monday, they need to do this huge WCW angle. And then, in my opinion, Monday they didn't deliver either. So tonight, I'm really hoping they do.
Well, rumor has it that they did. So
because the stuff on Monday, as far as Booker T getting that hideous axe kick on Vince McMahon, nonetheless. I mean, guys like Vince and Shane. I mean, it's just, at least for me, them getting in the mix with WCW guys isn't that big of a deal. I want to see a WWF guy hit a WCW guy. As far as to kick this thing off. I don't want to.
Well, I'm sure by Monday we're going to see it. Actually, we're going to see it tonight. So
hopefully. And then, did you guys hear that? One of the dark matches tonight. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this, but Low-Key wrestled another local guy, right?
Mike Sullivan,
and he won.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was weird because I mean, that Low-Key's not a fine guy, but he won.
Well, what if Mike Sullivan won?
Yeah, but I mean, it's just is that?
It doesn't really matter.
Is that kind of uncommon?
No, not at all.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, when they do dark matches with two unsigned guys, one of them's going to win. Yeah, and they do that, on tryout matches all the time.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, every other match he's wrestled so far he's lost. So I just thought there might be something into this because I think he's one of the guys that would be perfect for as far as WCW. Well, at least WCW. Now that they're going to be mixing WWF guys in, I don't know, but.
I sense that they're really not looking at adding new people right now. I mean, if someone great comes along, sure, but like a guy like Low-Key, maybe they will take him, but I mean, you have not seen a lot of big roster additions of late. In fact, you've just seen a whole rash of cutbacks just in the last week. So, got a couple of emails I want to read, but before we do that, I want to talk Randy. Two things. First of all, you've actually booked interpromotional angles before. We talked about the Smoky Mountain thing, which was actually real entertaining television. What's the pluses and the minuses, and from your experience, what do they need to look out for, and how do they need to handle it? I mean, one of the things that you guys did was... Hold on. That's really bad that just happened. But anyway, go ahead with that, Randy.
Basically, we did it twice. I did it twice here. We did it with World Class at one point and USWA, and it was not successful. We did it with Smoky Mountain, and it was very successful. I mean, just like the best business in like 6 or 7 years for a 3-month period. The World Class situation didn't work, except for Kerry Von Erich, we went with talent that nobody knew. even though the people in Memphis hadn't heard of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, wasn't able to get the TV, most of the talent, the Rock and Roll Express, Buddy Landell, the guys, the Tracy Smothers, the guys that we had were established in the past, and you know, back then we went the heat route. I mean, and the people were loyal USWA fans, and those guys had tremendous heat. It was like almost like the old days. We had to get police escorts for the Heels out of the building in Louisville every Tuesday, and that hadn't happened in 20 years. I don't know if that kind of killing type of heat would work today. It's easy when you're doing a promotional war to say, well, this other company, we don't want to get them too strong. It'll hurt our guys. If your talent is over in the first place, if your talent is you got them over, then it won't hurt them. If they're not over, it's not going to draw anyway. If you have people not over, you know they're not going to draw. So you have to have talent that's over, but then when you bring in the opposition group, you got to push the hell out of them, and they got to destroy your crew in the beginning. But this situation they're into, you know, it's so unique. You know, I'm glad I don't have to try to book it. It's a mess.
What are your impressions of how he's done so far?
Honestly, it had no interest at all. I mean, I had no interest at all in anything they're doing. I'm looking forward to it because I know they'll get it going and they'll do it right, no doubt in my mind. But so far, they hadn't piqued my interest. I was excited this past Monday because even though Lawler had told me Thursday nothing happening, when I read on the internet that what Dave posted, I'm thinking, I'm being kayfabed here. So until that show went off the air Monday, I was thinking they were doing a major angle at the end, and Lawler would be involved in the end. And when they went off the air, like they went off the air, I think I threw something at the TV or something. That really.
Oh boy, you're getting Cornette. Oh. Now tell us a little bit
for that one.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about like.
But keep waiting.
Yeah, I know, really, like Monday. But tell us a little bit about like working with the developmental thing and your thoughts. I mean, you've had a lot of guys come through. Some of whom made it. One of whom made it huge, Kurt Angle, and others of whom kind of disappeared. Are there any that disappeared that you expected to make it just for that one?
Not really. You know, Steve Bradley's one that I thought would make it there to the big show quicker than he has because he's still lingering on. And, you know, he's going to Les Thatcher's group. And if you remember this, it's kind of unofficial, but one of the first guys they sent to Memphis, and it was back to USWA days, and it wasn't an official developmental territory, but that was the concept that we were working at. They sent The Rock down here. Remember when he was here?
Oh, yeah, Flex Cabana.
Man, did I ever book him wrong. I mean, but they told me the deal was you can't call him Rocky, you can't acknowledge the fact that he's Rocky Johnson's son, which in Memphis, because Lawler told me the Legend show that had the best reaction of the night, bar none, he said, was Rocky Johnson. That shocked me. It might have been because he's Rock's father.
It might have been now because Rock's such a big star.
Right, it very well could have been. You know, Jim Ross has said on his Ross reports for the last 7-8 months, big changes in the developmental program, kept saying it, and nothing's happened, but in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I mean, they've made a major overhaul. First of all, Bruce Pritchard basically overseeing it. Now, he's not in, if my information is correct, he's not in talent relations at all. He's in the creative department. Yeah. Kevin Kelly was a big shot in the talent relations and the developmental center. The developmental talent they hated him. They used to rib and laugh at the fact that when he came down here, he got to be Vince McMahon. But he's not involved, and now apparently Paul Bear, Bob Clark, and Dennis Brent are ramrodding this thing, and they just recently cut 11 guys, and if you think about it, I put a little calculator to it. Just those 11 guys, Dave, that's a savings. And I went the low figure because some guys have better deals, but I did the minimum deal. They're saving $420,000 a year just off those 11 guys, and I'm wondering if the decision was made because they thought, well, we're not going to bring any of these guys up, or if they're just saving. I really don't know why the decision was made. I don't know what they're thinking.
I'm sure it's both.
The other
but of the guys, I mean, if you've got a guy in there for 2+ years, just as an example, and and they're just not making it, I mean, they cut a couple of guys. I'll ask your opinion of this too. I mean, because and you saw these guys a lot more than I did. I saw them when they started. I saw a few tapes from Memphis, but not a lot. Of the guys from the Memphis group that they did cut, like American Dragon, Spanky, Joey Abs, those kind of guys. I mean, would you have made those calls, or do you think they made the right calls?
Well, some of the guys I wouldn't have given the deal to in the first place, ever. I
want to mention any names?
I will mention. At the point that they did, I would have not given Spanky, Dragon, or Lance Cade a deal just because of the fact, and I know the business has changed. They went right from the Shawn Michaels, and I like every single one of those guys, but they went right from the school to a WWF deal immediately, and maybe that's just I've seen everybody. I'm still in the paying your dues, and it's harder to pay your dues as far as territory system, but it's just I don't think they were ready mentally. Physically in the ring, they were very good, and they all worked very hard. They were just not anywhere near ready with the mental aspect to be in the situation they were in. I was very surprised that they cut Rodney, Pete, and Joey Abs. I thought Joey Abs, his work was good. He worked hard. He needed to work on his personality, and his interview skills was his only drawback. Pete and Rodney, from where they were when they debuted as the Mean Street Posse, I mean, they'd really come along. I thought Rodney had great personality, great interview skills, and I thought both of those guys, I would not have cut those two guys, and probably wouldn't have cut Joey Abs either. The other thing that I think is that when the rumor was that Vince was going to buy WCW, all the developmental guys were thrilled to death. Oh, that's great, that's great, that's great. In my mind, I'm thinking, that's not so great for you.
Man, they don't know the business.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I used to say all the time, I tell all of this, and when you get older, and right now I'm approaching 40, I don't want to get to the point where I'm like a lot of the people that I used to knock. They knock the young people and bitter toward the world. I try not to get in that area too. But they just, like I was talking earlier, they just hadn't been there, and they don't have the history. They didn't want to talk about history. Spanky told me one time, I'll give you two stories. Spanky told me one time, he said, I hate anything from the 80s. Then he was talking about Lawler. He said these training tapes that you've given us that Cornette had sent me, he said,
Cornette tapes. Oh, he said, Cornette would love him.
He said a lot of Lawler matches on here, and he said, he said, I hate them. He said, but I'm sitting there, and he said the buildings are sold out, and he said, Lawler is horrible in the ring, but he said...
He's never horrible.
He said,
well, maybe. I would say he was never horrible.
He said but he said the people cheering, are going crazy just when he shakes his head. He said, I don't understand it. I said, it's because he was over, and he wasn't horrible. I said, he was great. And I said, as a matter of fact, you go out to the shows now, and maybe 300 or 400 people, but he still gets the best reaction of the night, and he knows how to manipulate the people. As for a good, funny story on the American Dragon, we were in the training school, and he was working with somebody, and I had him working heel, and we would have these matches for drills, and so I walked up to him. Now, he's a heel, and I walk up to him. This is the sort of thing, Cornette would have beat him up with a baseball bat. if Cornette would have heard this. He would have been greatly offended. But I said, you got your match worked out? And he said, yes, sir. I said, you're the heel, right? He said, yeah. I said, you have some good cheating spots figured in? And he says, no. He said, to tell you the truth, Mr. Hales, I'm not a very big fan of cheating. I said, not a fan of cheating? You're a daggum freaking heel. I told Cornette that story, but he was 500 miles away, so Dragon was safe physically. But that's the sort of thing. Have you ever heard in your life from daggum? I about fainted. Heel telling me he wouldn't have, and I'm thinking, how will I ever draw a dime with these guys? But, you know, I don't want to sound I promised myself going in with the Memphis situation and with not to come across bitter, and I guess I am, but what the hell?
No, I don't know about that, actually. I want to read.
When did you first know that Kurt Angle was going to be huge? Was it like the first day you went, wow, this guy's got it, or first month, year, what was it?
Oh, first day, no doubt, but, you know, we missed the boat, but with Rocky, it was more my fault. With Kurt, we missed the boat on him, but it wasn't my fault. They wanted him as a babyface, insisted him being a babyface, and when he went out and did that first promo, it was great, but it was totally opposite of what I wanted him to do. It just wasn't his personality. He can't do the strict babyface interview. That's what they wanted out of him, and he went out there, and I gave him a interview, and he just interpreted it different that I gave, and it was that people started booing him. It was the way he delivered it, but I'm thinking that is the greatest interview I've ever heard in my life, except it's not what I want. But I knew he was going to be big, and his work ethic, and he picked it up. I mean, he's 1 in a million.
Didn't he have his first match after like 3 days of training?
4 days.
Was it 4 days? He told me, now he had been here, I forgot how quick he came here. We were at a fair show, and we were just talking wrestling and talking about history, and he liked to hear the history, and that gets over with me. And I asked him, I said, how long have you been watching wrestling on TV, Kurt? He said, about 6 months. I said, 6 months, and you're that damn good? And he said, well, I pick things up quick. I said, I guess.
I guess so. I want to read these 3 things real quick before we run out of time. This is from Dave, who says, with all the people who call your show with negative attitudes about the invasion, I think I should weigh in with my views. People need to give this a chance. Everyone's complaining and whining, but I think they're not seeing the big picture. The reason this will work is because the WF owns both companies. This is the reason it won't fail. The WF can control and book the angle accordingly without the egos that would be in place in a true interpromotional program. How can callers call in and say that they don't think the people at home will believe that? How can these people know that? Just give it a chance. And then here's the opposite viewpoint from Andy, who says, I feel you guys are missing the point on the Raw WCW issue. I don't think there are too many people out there that believe WWF and WCW are separate companies. It's just tampering with a fairly successful, firmly established show is a bad idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when the NWO took over Nitro and replaced the WCW logos with their own, wasn't that one of the lowest rated, wasn't Nitros of all time? It wasn't, because the ratings ended up like years later going lower, but that was a terrible disaster of an hour. But the reason was because we didn't watch a wrestling show. We watched a bunch of goddamn carpentry work. Remember that show, Bryan?
Yeah, they were putting the show together on air.
They're pounding this stuff and knocking this stuff off, and I'm watching this going like, Eric is going to be so mad when he sees the numbers tomorrow. And I mean, you know, and he was so mad because like he hid the quarter hours because they were so disastrous in that third hour. Everybody turned off because nobody wants to watch a wrestling show and watch people do carpentry and tear down sets for an hour. Maybe for 5 minutes it's cool, or 3 minutes, but not the whole, you know. And then that whole hour when they finally did stuff was such a ridiculous farce, you know, which they didn't figure out. You know, Randy, you know, who's, you know, written a lot of wrestling shows. I mean, in your mind, what do you think fans want when they turn on wrestling on television? I mean, what do they, you know, they want to see a lot of different things, but what do you think they really want to see?
You know, I think they want to see, these days it's different than what it used to be. They want to see stars now. I think that's one of the WWF's problems. They switched one of their top baby faces, and they lost the Rock. But you know, I think it's changed. I think it's different. But I think they still want to see good wrestling. I think that's one thing that's definite for sure that the WWF got away from giving them. But I think they want to see good wrestling. They want to see stars, and you know, they want to see good soap opera.
Randy, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
This went quick today.
Yeah, it always goes quick now. So, and I want to thank everyone for joining in, calling in, and everything. We'll be back here tomorrow with Missy Hyatt at 5.